So today we have a very special outdoor edition of the Wood Whisperer. Welcome to my backyard. What I've got here is some Krylon wood stain. It's a rustic brown exterior spray stain. They sent me a couple samples and I thought it would be something cool to show you guys, just to give you my opinion and see what we think of it. I have some sample boards here. I've got some white oak and maple. The white oak is probably going to fare better in general outdoors than the maple will, but I want to see how the stain looks on both surfaces. Now, a spray stain like this is really compelling, number one, because it's sold and rated for outdoor use. It's got some UV protection in there, which is going to help that color from fading over time. And also, let's say you have some unfinished furniture pieces, something like this, with all these slats. That's just a pain in the butt to stain that or to get any finish on it. So something that comes in a spray form, if you don't already have an HVLP, is going to be really, really helpful. Now, I've got my concerns about it because it is an oil-based stain. And I've never been a fan of spraying oil-based stains because they take too long to dry. The colors tend to run a little bit. I like things that dry fast, like lacquer, water-based, and alcohol-based colors. So we'll see how this goes. I'm going to coat all these. I'm actually going to take the third one of each species, and I'm just going to wipe it down afterwards to see how different the effect is on the color and the consistency of color that we get. Now, before using any new product, I like to read the manufacturer's instructions and follow them to a T, just because you never know and you don't want to be able to blame yourself for the error. Of course, the surface preparation, that's already done. Remove mildew and dirt, okay. And it says to shake for 1 to 2 minutes. All right. So it says hold can 8 inches from the surface, spray in sweeping motion side to side, but do not over apply, whatever that means. Now notice we start spraying off the piece and we don't stop spraying until we're off the other end. Not too bad. Kind of reminds me of spray paint in the way that you occasionally get that little gap in there. A little hard to control. It's a very fine mist. Just going back and hitting the areas that look a little light. Okay, now every third board, I'm going to wipe off the excess. All right, so we'll let that dry for a little while. Remember, we're in the Arizona desert. It's going to be over 100 degrees today, and this should have no problem drying out here. But I'll be curious to see. It looks a little uneven because of, slight overlap in the spray pattern, but I'm really curious to see what the final result is once it dries. So I'll give it a couple hours. All right, so the boards are pretty much dry for the most part. I could definitely say that the wiped boards look the best. They are the most even and consistent. There's the white oak. That looks really good. And the maple, you would expect it to not look that great. I sanded them pretty hastily, so the sanding job is really the culprit of anything that doesn't look right here. But it's maple and it tends to splotch a little bit, so I don't expect that to look great no matter what stain I use. The other boards, on the other hand, not really happy with. To me, this looks like spray paint. There's a lot of color in that can, and it kind of makes sense. There has to be a lot of color because you need to cover a lot of real estate and do it quickly. Otherwise, a customer is going to buy that can, and it's going to be frustrating if they have to buy a dozen of these just to finish a small project. So you need to color, to transfer a lot of color in a hurry. The problem is, the more color that's in that spray, the harder it is to manage and get a nice even color across wide surfaces. You're doing some, rungs or slats or something like this. That's not going to be very difficult at all. But if you're doing a tabletop, wide boards like this, it's going to be a little bit harder. As soon as you make 2 or 3 passes and you have that opportunity for the spray to overlap the pass before, you're going to get a buildup of color and you're going to wind up with this sort of splotchy, uneven look. So something like this, I really would be, although it's meant to be used with just spray and leave it alone, unless it's really small parts that you can do in one pass, I would definitely lean toward the wipe-off method. My problem with that is you spent more money to get it in a spray can just to wind up wiping it off with a cloth. You know, if that's the case, I probably would just go with a more economical choice and get some traditional stain in the can. But overall, it does put a good amount of color in a can that's going to allow you to spray products like this. The question is now how this is going to hold up over time. I probably would not leave this as the only finish. I would never leave a color layer as my final finish, especially outdoors, and no matter how much it has in terms of UV protection. So I probably would hit this with an oil-based marine varnish or spar varnish on top to give it some protection from the sun and the elements. So I'm actually going to leave these out. Maybe I'll do an update a couple months from now just to see how this color holds up with different finishes on it, but that's for another video. So overall, a pretty interesting product. It might be something that you'd be interested in trying. The UV protection and the water repellent there is pretty compelling, and it could be a viable outdoor finish for some. Like I said, I would definitely be on the side of wiping the stain off after spraying for the sake of consistent color. But check it out, it's a Krylon wood stain.